Hey,
Hey,
we're
I like
actually
this.
outside.
Isn't this great? All of us together in our merry war band. Now, why am I standing next to you?
Well, you don't hear me complaining, and I'm stuck between you and this wannabe gamer here. Hey, I just thought this was a picnic. Where's the food?
I'm just saying I don't look as good standing next to inferior gameplay.
Hey, don't tempt me to take my catalyst back. I will do
You
it.
can have it if we can get some real PvP sets. Come on.
Hi guys, it's me, your new warbander.
Who the f is that?
That guy knew?
Hey, isn't the crafting guy supposed to be out here too?
Yeah, there wasn't any space for us out there, but crafting has much improved and is very friendly to everyone.
Anyway, I'm gonna have lots of fun without needing to raid or do dungeons.
Get that thing out of here.
Boo, heathen.
Hello?
This coming week, we're going to conclude what is probably WoW's most transformative expansion in its history. But did you like it? Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly. Be sure to like the video if you enjoy yourself, subscribe for more WoW coverage, and catch me live on Twitch. With the World Within Prepatch coming next week, we need to clarify what it means when we say that Season 4 is going to end. The things that are for sure going away because they said so include the Awakened rotation. After this week, all the Dragonflight raids will be in this awakened status, meaning that trying to get that Mythic Rock mount, it's going to be that much harder. Over in PvP and Mythic Plus world, title cutoffs are happening just before the season ends. So, on Monday, the top Mythic Plus scores are going to be locked, so the titles can be passed out, but it will still be possible to get the achievement-based titles, as in, like Keystone Master and Keystone Hero, and the Portal unlocks. On the PvP side, though, ratings will be closed, meaning that whatever your rating progression is, that's it. You're no longer going to be able to progress towards the elite gear sets and most other rewards. If you happen to have 1,000 or higher rating, you will still be able to go for the vicious mount by winning matches, so I guess PvP is shutting down a little bit more than PvE. Unlike the end of Shadowlands though, the FOMO isn't quite what it used to be. We can still complete the big old Dragonflight meta with no expiration date because, dude, no one should be denied a big old floofy dog. And despite the description, it appears that we can still progress towards completing the Awakened raid achievements until launch. Makes sense to me, seeing as how it's only now the rotation is going away. Also, Bullion bugged out this week, but it will continue to drop next week +1 as a makeup, and also until the War Within launch. Now, whether players can still collect the maximum amount of that bullion per character after the War Within launches, that's still up in the air. I kind of doubt it because, boy, that would sure set a precedent with us expecting some sort of system to let us unlock all the weapon appearances from raids by the end of any expansion, and all you gotta do is run your alts through a bunch of raid finders during the last month. So again, I doubt it. But as for a possible remix somewhere down the line to get all this stuff, yeah, sure, okay. Top tanks in the PvE space were fuming and tried to drag everyone into the fight. This week, the WoW team posted details on upcoming tank changes that amount to nerfs across the board. Here's the short summary though. Resource generation, self-healing, and mitigation is going to go down by a bit. Meanwhile, health pools have already gone up, and the likes of the fortified effects are going to get nerfed, with of course, more tuning to happen over the next 2 months when Season 1 of the War Within begins. Success, if you want to call it that, is going to mean that tanks are going to take more auto attack damage, but in a way that bigger attacks and tank busters aren't going to be a one-shot by comparison. Tanks aren't going to have a supermassive damage bubble that can't go away, or self-heals that'll take them from 10% all the way to full health and have it on demand, but they also won't be in a state where they're always at full life and then suddenly they're at the verge of death. The intent is to curb the current state of tanks where their toolkit is just so powerful that they don't have to rely nearly as much on healers until they get crushed between this small window of vulnerability. That's something that we see at the higher end of keys, where the player solution is to utilize everyone's toolkits to chain stun or use powerful defensives, and that's good gameplay and everything, but it's coordinated so well that it's arguably better to use a comp of 4 DPS characters and a tank and dump the healer altogether. The other week, devs discussed defensives and stops, and this week it's tanks. So this is all part of the impossible task of balancing a game that keeps moving forward and with players who figure out new metas on the regular. You know what's really silly though? even if the devs achieve perfection with whatever they're going to do, we're still going to come back to this conversation eventually, because most of this is centered around Mythic Plus and its infinitely scaling difficulty. At some level, balance will always start to break down, and when it does, we'll be right back here complaining about how our class or spec is underperforming. So same topic, different key level. But man, tanks were really pissed the other day, and the dooming was palpable. Like, oh my god, they would be like, oh my god, they're taking our fun. Tank population is on life support. You know, these were some really like next level takes. I'm paraphrasing here, but one person said something to the effect of, the game needs tanks to be almost overpowered in order to be fun, because it's not fun to rely on a healer. Now, I got to be careful here, because I don't mean to tell you viewers like what fun is supposed to be, but you know, okay, the last I checked, this is a holy trinity sort of MMO where DPS deals the damage, the tank prevents the team from taking extra damage, and the healer just prevents death. Meanwhile, thanks to our very robust toolkits these days, we can do a bit of role crossing to off-heal, to control the battlefield, and everyone's got to make sure it's not stand in fire. As someone who's been main tanking like forever now, but only representing myself, of course, I felt pretty embarrassed seeing some of these folks just whining. Like, you'd think by now they'd learn to take a hit. These are the obvious consequences of balancing. If the intent is to make healers feel good about their role, and part of that solution is to make healing feel more effective, then, you know, you gotta have something to heal. Giving them a better DPS toolkit is not going to fix this problem. Unsurprisingly, nerfs are going to go towards that role that has a bit too easy of a time surviving outside of really high level keys. Again, what's funny is that all this happened in the span of a few hours while the beta was down. Once testers actually played through the changes, I stopped seeing the complaints on social media. And now the feedback is definitely there, right? You know, reasonable takes like, okay, this and that pack, it's still doing too much damage that can't be crowd controlled, or this tank ability, it's not working right, you know, that sort of thing. But the dooming, it just sort of vanished. If you were there when I first reacted to these changes, you might have thought I was crazy. We'd like paladins to have slightly more... We would like paladins to have slightly more self-healing, so we're increasing the power of Word of Glory. Yeah, smooth, Blizz. But in case you don't know me, my playstyle as a tank and Keystone Master in Heroic Raids is to actually mostly look at my raid frames and heal other people, because me, I'm fine. I tank with a healing trinket because it's fun. Seriously, go ahead. Look at my logs throughout most of Dragonflight where I do tons and tons of healings on others, where I'm like in the 99th percentile for off healing in raids as a tank. I'm a pro at being a little bit crazy. Indirectly, I've been pointing this out for a while. Tanks are fine. Tanks are like a little bit too fine in Dragonflight. And this is a mid-level performer's take. And there's virtually no representation of the Keystone Master and Heroic level player out there on social media. And that's where we're at right now, but what do you think in general of what's happening here? Are tanks and healers in an okay place? If you've been testing, how does it feel? Because these changes might be coming as soon as next week, and even though measuring new expansion changes versus the final raid of an expansion is not going to give very useful feedback, but there will be feedback. Chronicles Volume 4 released this week, meaning it's time once again for our age-old tradition. Keeping score between the factions, like who won this or that battle and who got the credit. The fourth book covers the Mist of Pandaria expansion all the way through Shadowlands, and it's actually split pretty evenly down the middle with regards to credit, except for a few clarifications. There's other tiny little reveals and answers to some of our lore questions, and I'm not going to cover too much here. Like, these aren't really spoilers, it's all known information, just with some additional details. And besides, it's all Titan propaganda anyway. Can we really believe anything here? The new book refers to not 4 but 5 old gods. So we have Yasiraj, assuming I'm pronouncing that right. We got Cthulhu and N'Zoth and Yogg-Saron. And we got Frank, the old god who's just way too tired to deal with so much responsibility. I'm just kidding. It's more than likely going to be Xal'atath, which is kind of crazy considering that her lore started off as a, really mysterious yet sexy disembodied voice inside a weapon, and it's been building up since Legion. You see, that's how you do it, jailer. I'm going to drop a few more random facts. Like I said, I want this part to be short. During Mist of Pandaria, specific credit is given to the Horde for the events in the Heart of Fear raid, and Alliance for the Terrace of Endless Spring. During the events of Warlords of Draenor, the Alliance went to Heimal while the Horde marched on Blackrock Foundry. And between the mock Gra between Thrall and Garrosh, the Chronicle explicitly says that, quote, Garrosh placed no limitation on what weapons or skills could be called on in the heat of battle. He saw himself as the superior warrior and wanted there to be no question of his victory. Okay, is this Titan bias? Or did Thrall play a hand in writing this? And during the Battle for Azeroth, the events that led to the Crucible of Storms raid is a story centered around a single Horde champion. So thanks Horde for pretty much kicking off the World Soul Saga. Now let's get to the more recent timeline and take a brief look back at Dragonflight. I'm not going to be all that rigid here. I'm just going to come at this with the vibe of, just us, sort of sitting around, having some snacks and drinks, being like, dude, so Dragonflight, what'd y'all think? And I'm gonna go first, of course. I feel like I can take Dragonflight and compare it to Mist of Pandaria and Legion kind of at the same time. And by that I mean Dragonflight introduced some radical new stuff with dragon riding and a game world that's shaped unlike anything that we've had before and will forever change world building in the future. It brought a story that might not have connected with everyone due to a lack of faction representation, as just one example, but it's one that focused on not just the moment, but the emotional aftermaths that made the whole experience feel a bit more real. And I should mention, not having to roll every freaking class and faction to see that story. Gameplay-wise, we got both a reset and a revolution. Talent trees took it back from borrowed power, while we also got augmentation of a whole ass combat role in a mid-season patch. Tier is back, and it's easier to get than ever. Professions, they got turned upside down with everyone being able to benefit from it way more than earlier expansions. Instead of these long tail grinds that were designed or forced to last 6 to 8 months of like these daily logins, smaller patches is what we got with more complete features in these smaller time frames. Folks who are visiting Dragonflight after it's over, they're going to have so many places to visit and things to collect and activities to do, except for the Researchers Under Fire event that still sucks. Dragonflight doesn't exactly deserve credit for everything, but it does happen to be an expansion where there were lots of philosophical changes and that started to blossom. The trading post could have happened at any time, but in response to players wanting cool rewards to always look forward to, almost like a loyalty bonus, hey, here it is. Dragonflight took steps towards acknowledging account-wide features and cross-faction gameplay, and they're about to dive straight in. Solo players who didn't want to get into groups to run dungeons, they could do that now, and soon they can do raids as well. The season concept is being even more embraced, and I know that's controversial with arguments that the seasonal reset risks to disrespect players' time and efforts and discourage players from making a long-time investment. But there are also counter-arguments that without seasons, it would be that much harder to motivate players to jump back in, and don't we want more players to play? That's always going to be a debate, but no doubt this is our first step outside of the borrowed power era, with no hoops to jump through, or forced campaigns to complete, or order hall progression, and all these forced rep grinds to get a certain thing and a Torghast to climb. We got right to just playing endgame at max level, with the new upgrade system for regular upgrades that, at least for me, it felt way better than gaining another little artifact level. And the lulls, while they're still there, they actually filled out, really hardcore. No one predicted a Plunderstorm or a Mop remix to come at the end of Dragonflight. And I don't see the World Soul Saga changing this pattern, but maybe down the line, maybe we can go back to 4 seasons of raids plus an Awakened for a more full 2-year expansion, because, sorry, we're not going to dodge the lull. In the meantime, I feel okay enough with moving on to some new story after what I believe is about 20-ish months, but I'd love to have new developments that bring me back to the Dragon Isles for a visit. And this is going to sound weird, but Dragonflight's development maintained this sort of stability as opposed to having these highs and lows, these roller coasters of dissatisfaction and relief. So I guess what I'm talking about is how we would kind of suffer through Legion legendaries before the vendor came in late in the expansion, and grinding Azerite essences until we can learn them account wide, and then there was that corruption vendor whenever that finally came in, and there's pulling the ripcord on Covenant switching and the Renown gates, and waiting more than half a year for Pathfinder. Dragonflight did have issues, obviously, right? Like the story quests that were behind a really high renown level and taking their sweet time with Steady Fight, aka Pathfinder again. And there were dissatisfactions with people wanting a profession skill reset or uncapping crests and flight stones. There are always going to be certain dissatisfactions with outdoor content, and Research Under Fire really sucked. I'm saying it twice. And of course, there are other complaints. I guess the easy trap to fall into is that Dragonflight following the likes of BFA and Shadowlands. Oh, it's like, oh, that's why. That's why Dragonflight turned out to be reasonably successful, because those other expansions sucked. And maybe that's not wrong, it's just an opinion, but I could also say that Dragonflight is a reflection of lessons learned, and we should give credit where it's due. Consider this. What if Legion launched instead of Dragonflight, or I guess to be better, what if the exact Legion formula was about to launch in 2024? Like with how we feel these days about borrowed power and a profession system revolving around immediately destroying whatever we craft, and all of the alt and friendliness and the forced grinds. So again, my opinion, Legion only got a pass back then because it was the first to do all of these things, and outside of a possible Legion classic, we've moved on from that. Usually it takes a while for players to really look back and appreciate the expansions of the past, and it probably does for you too. I think I'm ready to judge though, or at least I'll stick my neck out there. I think this expansion is my favorite. I don't recall other expansions where I spent lots of time playing the game, but it wasn't raiding, or it wasn't working towards raiding. It's like, hey, cool, I'm developing professions and making money, and I'm zipping around for appearances. I went hard on the activities in Dragonflight, not because they had power, but because they had like cool looking things behind them. And I noticed that with my raid team that folks enjoyed themselves. And I could tell because they kept showing up and they kept rolling alts. The game's changed. I've changed. The guild has changed too. And now for at least, everything seems pretty lined up. I'd love for you to share your own takes though. No take is bad, and that's the show, I guess. So yeah. Okay, so you folks who made it this far, right? Y'all the real ones. I love you. I appreciate you. And I trust your input. So again, real quick, look at this. What do you think? I did a sample product of a shirt that I want to release, and it's there, but I'm not fond of this. You can kind of hear it. I'm not fond of this iron-on print. It feels like it's going to end up like the original Wet Sword t-shirt, where the print on that, it's like totally starting to flake and it's pretty gross. I have another sample coming, it's on the way, that uses less print. Like instead of white text, it's going to be transparent, but I'd love a little bit of input on the shirts. And I guess this fun cup too. Yay, copium, very simple design. I think this is going for like $10 or so, but anyway, let me know. No big deal, but oh my god, pre-patch next week. I'm gonna find out pretty soon just how much transmog I collected, and that's gonna be super exciting. I also plan on having like a mini add-on video of stuff that should work day one of the pre-patch, but I'm gonna have an oversized version of that video out in time for the expansion. And you can also expect more profession guides to release as well. I'm on schedule to be done with all of them before launch, so stay tuned as those come out. And now let's thank folks. A big thanks to the folks on Twitch and Patreon for supporting the channel. And it has been such a while since we had a newcomer, Timo. Yes! Thank you so much for the help. Every little bit counts. And let's not forget about, of course, the algorithm squad. There we go. That's you. Give a shout over in the comments. Please hit the like button, subscribe for more WoW coverage. Catch me live on Twitch, and I'll see you in the pre-patch. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy. Algorithm.